Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music on their iOS device. And in today's video, we're going to be giving you a few different tips to help make your drums sound a little bit better right after this. And remember folks, if you do enjoy this content, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Now if you missed it, just last week we released our brand new completely free Essentials MIDI Pack 2 called Drum Patterns. And that pack was designed to help new producers get started learning drum patterns in popular genres and what exactly is required of each drum pattern for specific genres. And in last week's video, we actually went through a bunch of those different patterns, going into detail and explaining the fundamentals of what makes up each one of those different patterns. So definitely make sure to check that out if you haven't got a chance yet. But in today's video, we're actually going to be using some of those drum patterns again, this time to explain how to make your drums actually sound better, as opposed to specifically improving your drum patterns. Now, of course, there is several aspects that can go into this, everything from mixing to sound design and sound selection and more. And we're going to tackle these and some other fundamental properties that make these drums sound good so that you can apply these same concepts in your own productions. Alright, and now with that intro aside, let's hop right into Cubasis and start making some of these drums. Alright, now what we have here is a project opened with several tracks, and these tracks are going to have drum patterns in different genres. And what we're going to do first is use these tracks to explain how important sound selection is. And although the project is currently set at 140 BPM, that's actually going to change as we change different genres moving down the project here. So we're going to be using this project to explain the importance of sound selection, BPM, and swing, and how and why they come into play in your drum sounds. So first what we have here is a trap pattern, and this is going to be playing again in 140 BPM, and this is going to be using our Genesis sample pack kit with the preset of Genesis Kit 12. Now we also have this same pattern right here, but instead of using a sample pack that's specifically designed for trap and drill sounds, we're going to be using the LD1 Classic machine instead, which is an extra in-app purchase inside of Cubasis 3. So first what we're going to do is play this drum pattern with a trap sample pack kit, and then we're going to play it back with this Classic Machines plugin so you can hear the difference and really see how important the sound selection is for specific genres. So let's hit play on this pattern. So hopefully you can hear that this particular pattern was designed for the specific genre of trap, and then when played back with this Classic Machines plugin, it sounds completely different and completely out of place. And now let's do the same thing here with this EDM drum pattern. We've now set the project to 128 BPM, and for the sounds for the first track we're going to play, they're going to be coming from the AM House Kit 2 preset from the Microsonic built into Cubasis 3. And then for the track after that, we're going to be playing back this exact same pattern, but instead of using a drum kit specifically designed for EDM or house music, we're going to try using our Genesis trap kit so we can hear the difference. Alright, and now let's hit play on this pattern. Alright, so that EDM or house pattern definitely did not sound right with trap sounds in it. And you really don't have to be specifically proficient in each one of these individual genres to feel that something is off. Remember that most listeners these days are exposed to a number of different genres, because they can pretty much of course have every single song that they want with the click of a button through streaming platforms like Spotify. And they're definitely going to feel that something is off if the sound selection is not on point. Alright, and now let's move on to our final example here, which is a synthwave drum pattern. We've now changed the project to 110 BPM, and our synthwave sounds from our first track is going to be coming from the LD1 Classic machine from Cubasis 3. And our second track here we'll have the sounds be coming from the AM Rock Kit from the Microsonic. And now let's listen to this 80s or synthwave drum pattern using this Classic Machines plugin inside of Cubasis 3. So again, that was the exact same pattern being played back to back, but with completely different sounds. The second time we played it back, we used this rock kit, so that's why it sounded so much like rock and roll, because it was using these classic acoustic drum sounds, as opposed to the more electronic or synthesized drums coming from that classic Machines plugin. Now that we've demonstrated the importance of sound selection, I now want to demonstrate how important the BPM is. So what we're going to do here is play back these patterns in the most commonly used BPMs, and then we're going to play back in an uncommon used BPM, so you can hopefully again really tell the difference. Okay, so let's start with our first pattern once again, the trap pattern here, which is by default set at 140 BPM, as trap genre music usually goes between 130 and 160, 170 BPM. So we'll first play it back in that 140 BPM, and then something slower like 90 BPM. All right, let's hit play. Alright, so pretty big, massive difference there. One of those BPMs definitely feels right and almost makes you want to start rapping right there on the spot, and one of those BPMs sounds way too much slowed down. With something as slow as 90 BPM, you're getting more back into that classic hip-hop genre, as opposed to the more modern trap hip-hop genre. Now let's try the same thing again, but with our EDM pattern. Here by default, it's set to 128 BPM, because usually the EDM genres fall between 120 and 130 BPM. So let's listen to this first at 128 BPM, and then let's speed it up to 140 BPM. So again, a pretty big difference there, just way too fast, way too sped up there on that second round. The first one is definitely set in a BPM that you can dance to and get a groove to, whereas that second one is it's just way too fast, you can't even like bob your head really. And overall, just definitely doesn't feel right. And now let's take a look at the synthwave drum pattern. We're going to play that first in its native BPM, around 110 BPM. Between around 100 and 110 BPM is generally where synthwave tracks are. And then after that, we're going to play it a little bit too slow, around 80 BPM, and then a little bit too fast at around 130 BPM. Alright, so you can definitely tell there that one was too slow, one was too fast, and one was just about right. And that's what I mean when listeners can really just generally feel what's good and what's bad. So if you do plan on producing tracks in these specific types of genres, you do have to cater to these types of listener expectations. And the next topic I wanted to talk about that can help improve your drums is swing. Now swing can definitely be confusing at first to new producers, but all it really is moving your notes a little bit off the grid. And we'll show you what we mean by that. So if we double tap our first pattern here, what we're looking at is a pretty typical lo-fi pattern. But if we zoom in a little bit here, you can see that a bunch of these hats are actually off the grid. You can see that they do not line up with this line perfectly, because what I've done here is applied around 26% swing to these hats. And you can see that we've also moved our snares off the grid a little bit too, and I do this for about every other snare. And similarly, you can see our kicks. Just about every other kick or so is off the grid just a little bit. Now we do this for a couple of different reasons. The first and most important reason is to make the pattern feel more human, because very often drummers don't hit the exact same patterns at the exact same velocity on a grid. So we try to emulate simulate that by moving our notes off the grid a little bit with swing. Now the second thing that swing provides is something called bounce. And bounce is pretty much just as it sounds. When there is enough bounce in a drum pattern, you can definitely feel it by nodding your head. And not just an up and down like a 4 on the floor rock and roll pattern, but instead much more of a groovy, move your neck back and forth type of bounce. So let's see if we can hear that in these two patterns. So what I have is that first pattern that we just described, with a bunch of swing in all of the kick, hats, and snares. And below that we have the exact same pattern, but with absolutely no swing. In fact, everything is lined up on the grid perfectly. We're going to start out with the pattern that has swing, and then go back and forth between that and the pattern without swing. And we'll be doing this in 4-bar intervals. So every 4 bars or so it's going to change. Alright, let's hit play. So you can definitely tell that one of those patterns made my neck move back and forth like this into a groove, and then the other pattern just kind of made me shake my head back and forth, following along with the exact grid pattern. Now, as usual in music, there is no wrong way to do things here. It really all depends on the feeling that you're going for and the genre that you're producing in. But pretty much no matter the genre, you at least want to apply a little bit of swing so that you can make your drum patterns sound and feel more human. Now, the last thing I want to briefly talk about to make your drums better is processing. Now, extensive drum processing is out of the scope of this video, but I at least wanted to show you how to apply an initial treatment. If you do want to dive a little bit deeper into drums processing, definitely again make sure you check out those videos in the top right hand corner. But for today's video, we're just going to go over this initial treatment. So what I'm going to do first is play the original drum track, and then we'll play the processed drum tracks so you can hear the difference. Alright, let's hit play. Now, of course, right away, you'll probably be able to tell that that second loop there, the processed drums, are much louder. But it's not just about getting your drums louder overall. It's about making sure that every part of your drums, and indeed after that every instrument, is set in the right frequency spectrum. Because if you have too much bass in your lows, then that's going to muddy up your kick drum. If you have your hats in too high of a frequency, that could actually damage your ears. Or having other instruments too high in a frequency could clash with vocals. So everything really does have its own specific spot in the overall spectrum. Now, in addition to those videos that we recorded previously about drum processing, we also have a completely free mixing guide available on the website. You can download that free guide and a bunch of our free sample packs all at MobileMusicPro.com/free. Now, what do I mean by when I say initial treatment? What I mean by that is setting your initial sound sculpting tools, such as your compressor and EQ. Now, if we look at our first track here, the hats track, you can see that we have our channel strip on here, and we are using the preset of Electronic Hat 2. This is going to use the compressor to bring up the volume just a little bit. And after that, we have our Studio EQ. Now, this Studio EQ has a factory preset of Electronic Hi-Hat 1. And this is what I mean by the initial treatment, having your sound sculpting tools first in your insert effects, which is going to be your compressor and your EQ. You'll see that for all of these different tracks, the clap, the snare, and the kick, all they really have is a channel strip and EQ, each using factory presets from Steinberg inside of Cubasis that will set these instruments in approximately the right frequency spectrum. So just like with our hats, if we look at our clap, we have our Studio EQ using a factory preset of Electronic Snare 3, and then our snare track using a Studio EQ factory preset of Acoustic Snare 1. And then for our kick, we are using a Studio EQ again with a factory preset of Electronic Kick 1. Now, generally, of course, you want to dial in very specific settings for each instrument, but these presets can really help new and novice producers get great sounds right away, without even having to have too much knowledge of an EQ and a compressor. Now, let's take a look at our group track here. What we've done here is group all of these 4 tracks together, the hats, clap, snare, and kick, into a drum group. And on this drum group, we have a compressor. So if we take a look at that compressor, you can see that we're using a factory preset of tape compression. So what this is going to do is both rein in the transients of all of our drum sounds, making them a little bit tighter, which makes the mixing process in the end that much easier. And it's going to raise the overall volume a little bit with this output on the far right hand side. You can see that we are increasing this output by 2.9 dB. And again, this just scratches the surface on what we call mixing and processing our sounds. But using these techniques and concepts that we talked about today should definitely get you from amateur sounding drums to much more professional sounding drums. And as we like to say a lot on this channel, it's not any one of these individual things by themselves that will make your drums or drum patterns sound better. The magic really comes when you start combining all of these things together. It's then when you start getting results that start to resemble some more professional sounds. Alright, and now it's time for our final thoughts. And if you are still rocking with us, then we just can't thank you enough for being here. And we especially can't thank those enough that are here every single Wednesday and Friday to watch our live streams and our live premieres. Now, we do hope that some of these concepts can help improve your drums, because we didn't really go too deep into detail here. We kind of kept it relatively high level. We dive a lot more into specific concepts in other videos, such as mixing, parallel compression, soft clipping, and more, in other videos that we have linked right up here in the corner. And I again just really wanted to drive home the concept of how important sound selection is, really especially if you're not a sound designer. And this concept doesn't just apply to drums either. And this is because generally listeners have some pretty specific expectations when they want to listen to songs in specific genres. For example, the lo-fi genre is very laid back because generally people that are listening to that are doing something like programming or studying or doing something that requires a lot of thought. And if we are talking about the lo-fi genre specifically, then we can definitely help you there, because we just announced the release date of our brand new upcoming Essentials Sample Pack, Lo-Fi. We're really super stoked about this one, guys. We put a lot of hard work into this one as usual, and we're going to be talking a lot more about it in the upcoming days and weeks, so make sure you stay tuned to the channel. And don't forget, folks, we still have our Discord chat running strong, so if you have any questions, you can definitely answer them there, and that's really where the conversation can continue long after the live streams and live premieres have ended. And of course, we always have a lot more content coming your way, so if you do want to stay up to date with everything that we're doing here, from sample packs to MIDI packs to giveaways, contests, and more, definitely make sure to sign up for our completely free mailing list at MobileMusicPro.com. And so, until next time, everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you later. Hey guys, Vortex here, and if you're not aware yet, we do have over 100 fully edited videos now on the channel. And we make music every single Wednesday live on our iPad. Plus, we have a bunch of free sample packs, MIDI packs, guides, and more on our website at MobileMusicPro.com/free. So if you are into that sort of thing, producing music on your iOS device, then definitely make sure to like and subscribe.